Dragon Emperor Sun Chapter 521 to Chapter 530. Captain Su, it's getting late now, and Mr. Chen is not ready, can't we stay in Horindal for one night? Bai Zhantang asked Captain Na Su. No, the order I was given was to pick him up and go to the southwest with him. I didn't say that I could stay and wait. After Captain Su finished speaking, he turned around and walked towards the car. But at the moment he turned around, he whispered, Master Bai, how come you are a servant now? You, Bai Zhantang was furious, but then Captain Su had already returned to the car. Mr. Chen, look, Bai Zhantang looked at David and cast an inquiring look. I'm going to change clothes, I'll be leaving right away. David got up and changed clothes, called Sonia to say goodbye, and then got on the bus with Bai Zhantang. Sorry, our car is full, you drive yourself. Captain Su rolled down the car window and said coldly. It can be seen that Captain Su is very emotional about coming to pick up David to go to the southwest with him, but he is just following orders, and he does not dare to disobey. David just smiled lightly, Bai Zhantang, you drive. Bai Zhantang nodded, then drove by himself, taking David to the southwest. The four cars were driving towards the southwest at high speed, and it soon became dark, but Captain Su and the others did not intend to stop and rest. Mr. Chen, what should we do? This Su Shimao is a reckless man. If it weren't for his high strength, he would not be able to stay in the Dharma Protector Pavilion in the capital long ago. No one likes him. Seeing that he didn't stop to rest at all, Bai Zhantang asked David. Follow. They don't stop, we don't stop, if you're tired, let me drive. David said lightly. That's not necessary, this point is nothing. Bai Zhantang shook his head. The car drove fast all night, and it had entered the southwest area. There were winding mountain roads everywhere. Bai Zhantang yawned and rubbed his eyes forcefully. If you're tired, let me drive instead. David said to Bai Zhantang. Mr. Chen, it's okay, I can still persevere. Bai Zhantang opened his eyes forcefully and said. Seeing this, David put one hand on Bai Zhantang's shoulder, and a pure spiritual power was input into Bai Zhantang's body. At this time, Bai Zhantang was extremely shocked. It seems that his grandfather said it right. David is indeed a cultivator. Just now, Bai Zhantang felt his body relaxed for a while, and all the sleepiness disappeared. Li, thinking of this, Bai Zhantang became even more excited. The sun was slowly rising, and the sun was already showing in the east, but Su Shimao and the others still showed no signs of stopping to rest, and they didn't even eat. Are these guys all made of iron? Bai Zhantang said angrily. Just after Bai Zhantang finished speaking, suddenly a Mercedes car from behind crashed into their car crookedly. Bai Zhantang was startled, hurriedly braked and stopped the car. This is the winding mountain road, and there is a cliff next to it. If it hits the car and hits the car under the cliff, it will not survive. Damn, how did you drive? Bai Zhantang yelled angrily. But the car rushed to the front, still crooked, and drove down the cliff. Seeing this, David hurriedly opened the door, only to see a figure walking towards the Mercedes. Bang! After a loud noise, the direction of the Mercedes changed, and I saw it hit the mountain on the side of the road, and then stopped. Bai Zhantang got out of the car in a hurry. He saw David standing on the side of the road cliff at this time. It was David who just punched the car and changed the direction of the car. Mr. Chen, are you all right? Bai Zhantang asked. Go and see how the people in the car are doing. David shook his head and said. Oh. Bai Zhantang hurried over to check it out. It was found that there was only one girl in the Mercedes. At this time, the airbag had popped out, and the girl was lying on the steering wheel, as if she had passed out. With a sudden force, Bai Zhantang opened the car door and carried the girl out. The girl looked small, only in her 20s, wearing a light blue dress, but at this time there was a lot of blood on the dress, and the girl's face was pale. David walked over, put one hand on the girl's hand gently, a spiritual energy entered the girl's body, the girl moved, and slowly opened her eyes. After seeing Bai Zhantang and David, the girl was a little scared, got up in a hurry, and opened the distance from the two of them. "Miss, don't be afraid, you just had a car accident, and we rescued you," Bai Zhantang hurriedly explained to the girl. The girl looked at her car, then frowned and recalled, and then she relaxed her vigilance. "Thank you, I may be a little sleepy, and there was a car accident. I checked just now. Your body is fine, but some parts of your body are scratched. Call for help yourself." After David finished speaking, he looked at Bai Zhantang and said, "Let's go." "Wait a minute." The girl suddenly shouted, and hurriedly stopped David and Bai Zhantang. "My phone is broken, and there is no way to call for help." "Where are you going?" "Go to Baihei City." Bai Zhantang said. "That's great, I'm from Baihei City, can you take me on the way? I can give you money." The girl said happily. "We still have things to deal with, it's inconvenient, you can wait for the rescue yourself." After David finished speaking, he opened the door and got in the car. Seeing this, Bai Zhantang could only smile helplessly at the girl, and also got into the car. "Why don't you have any sympathy? Do you have the heart to watch me stay here as a girl? What if you encounter bad people?" The girl blocked directly in front of the car and roared at David in dissatisfaction. David rolled down the car window. "Aren't you afraid that the two of us are bad people?" "No, the two of you won't be bad people, but I will meet each other. It can be seen from your faces that you two are good people," the girl exclaimed. David smiled slightly, he knew that this girl just used this kind of words to please the two of them. It's a little unlikely that a girl in her early 20s would look at her face. "Mr. Chen." Bai Zhantang looked at David with a question in his eyes. It seemed that he wanted to bring a girl. "Come up," David said lightly. The girl happily opened the car door and sat in the back row. "Thank you." Bai Zhantang continued to drive, while the girl introduced herself in the back row chatteringly. "My name is Shen Meng Chen. I am a graduate of King Bei College in Kyoto. I just graduated this year. What are you two called? What are you going to do in Baihei City?" Shen Meng Chen asked David and Bai Zhantang. "Are you a student of King Bei College?" Bai Zhantang, who was driving, asked in surprise. "Of course, I still have a student ID here, you can take a look if you don't believe me." Shen Meng Chen took out his student ID and let Bai Zhantang take a look. "Really, I also graduated from King Bei College, but I am a grade 84 graduate, 5 times higher than you," Bai Zhantang said while driving. "Really? Then you're a senior? It's such a coincidence. I didn't expect to meet a senior here. You must know that it is too difficult for the southwestern region to be admitted to King Bei College, and I can't meet a few classmates." Shen Meng Chen saw that Bai Zhantang was an alumnus with him, and he talked more. "My home is from Kyoto." Bai Zhantang smiled. "Oh, I thought you were also from the southwest. Kyoto is far from here. What are you doing in Baihei City? Are you traveling?" Shen Meng Chen asked. "Yeah." Bai Zhantang didn't know what to say, so he could only nod his head. Since Swanya Valley established a hot spring resort, there have been a lot of people visiting Baihei City. I heard that bathing in hot springs can cure diseases, and some people's cancers can be cured, but I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't been there anyway. Shen Meng Chen was nagging himself. "Do you know Swanya Valley?" David, who had been closing his eyes slightly and didn't speak, suddenly opened his eyes and asked Shen Meng Chen. Logically speaking, in places like Swanya Valley, ordinary people should not know about it, so why did they set up a resort? Of course, we all know that in Baihei City, the resort not only has hot springs, but also built a sect for people to pray for, and there is a master who is very good at divination, but my dad said it was all a trick to deceive people. He never let me go." Shen Mengchen said. David nodded slightly, closed his eyes again and stopped talking. It seems that in the eyes of ordinary people, Swanya Valley is a place for tourism and vacation. As for the deeper things, presumably ordinary people will not know. Seeing David turned around, closed his eyes again and stopped talking, Shen Mengchen gave David a direct look with a look of disgust on his face, and then saw Bai Zhantang saying, "Senior, you haven't said your name yet. When you went to Baihei City, did you go to Swanya Valley? I see your face, although you are not young, you definitely don't have a girlfriend yet." "My name is Bai Zhantang, this time I really went to Swanya Valley, and I really don't have a girlfriend." Bai Zhantang smiled slightly, and then joked, "You don't really know how to look at faces, right?" "Of course it's true, how could I lie to you? My dad is a famous face-to-face master in Baihei City, and he gives him the nickname Shen. As long as my dad takes a look, he can tell the identity and origin of this person clearly." Shen Mengchen said proudly. "So powerful!" Bai Zhantang exclaimed, "If it was so powerful, it would be like a fairy." "Of course it's amazing, although I only learned a little from my dad, but I can see that this guy doesn't look good, but his peach blossoms are very lucky, many girls like him, and it seems that there is a big star who likes him." Shen Mengchen looked at the co-pilot David and said. Because David was reluctant to take her at first, and David never spoke, which made Shen Mengchen's impression of David very bad. "Big star." Bai Zhantang looked at David with a puzzled expression, but he didn't know that there were other big stars who liked David. Although David's eyes were slightly closed at this time, his heart was a little shocked. The big star that Shen Mengchen was talking about should be Song Tai. Can feel it. However, although this guy is very lucky, he will eventually fail many girls, and in the near future, he will have a catastrophe. Shen Mengchen looked at David and continued. "What catastrophe?" Bai Zhantang asked hastily. "If the matter of the Qin family is a catastrophe, then it must be. After all, after David killed Qin Feng, the Qin family will never let it go. I can't see it. I can't see through many things about this guy, but it must be life and death." Shen Mengchen frowned, looked at David carefully and said. Bai Zhantang looked at David. At this time, David was still slightly closing his eyes, as if he was asleep and didn't hear at all. "Drive well," David said lightly. Although he didn't open his eyes, David seemed to see it. Bai Zhantang hurriedly regained his senses, and started driving attentively. "Senior, I think you are the life of a wealthy aristocrat, and this guy has short ears and is obviously an orphan. Why are you so afraid of him?" Shen Mengchen asked in confusion. But as soon as Shen Mengchen's words fell, he only felt that the air in the whole car condensed for a moment, and a chill was pressing. I saw David opened his eyes and turned his head to look at himself. David's eyes were filled with endless coldness, which made Shen Mengchen instantly shut his mouth and tremble slightly. When David retracted his gaze and leaned back on the seat, the temperature in the car rose a little. This time, Shen Mengchen stopped chattering, and secretly glanced at David with a little panic. The car was still driving fast, but not far away, they saw Su Shimao's cars parked on the side of the road, and some people got out of the car, eating and smoking. Seeing David's car coming, Su Shimao walked over directly, his face was very gloomy. "What are you doing? I've been waiting for you for a long time, do you know that time is precious? I'm not as leisurely as you young masters. My task is very tight, if there is no order to return, I will not wait for you." Su Shimao reprimanded David and Bai Zhantang. David ignored him, and Bai Zhantang frowned slightly and ignored Su Shimao. Bai Zhantang knew that this guy had such a temperament, and he didn't want to conflict with him. Shen Mengchen, who was sitting in the back row, rolled down the car window. "How do you talk? They were at time to save me, and they said something to me. Su Shimao saw that there was a girl suddenly behind him. After a moment's surprise, he looked at Shen Mengchen, and then continued to face David and Bai Zhantang and said, "We have to get to Baihei City before it gets dark, and we will start now." After Su Shimao finished speaking, he turned around and planned to leave, but Shen Mengchen stopped him. "Wait a minute. Is something wrong?" Su Shimao asked with a cold face. "I advise you to rest here for half an hour before leaving. I see that your yintang is black, which is a great omen, and there is a bloody disaster." Shen Mengchen said to Su Shimao. "What nonsense!" Su Shimao frowned, with a faint anger on his face, but because Shen Mengchen was a girl, Su Shimao didn't have a seizure. The car started and continued to drive forward. Su Shimao would not stop and rest for half an hour because of Shen Mengchen's words. He didn't believe this. In Su Shimao's eyes, he only believed in strength. "Humph, this guy doesn't listen to me, and he will be unlucky sooner or later." Shen Mengchen snorted coldly. "Junior girl, were you just kidding, or are you telling the truth?" Bai Zhantang asked. "Of course it's true. If you don't believe it, just wait and see." After Shen Mengchen finished speaking, he only heard a violent collision in front of him. Boom! I saw a truck coming down from the winding mountain road. Because the brakes failed, it suddenly hit the car that Su Shimao was riding. The huge impact force knocked Su Shimao's car far away, and then stopped on the edge of the cliff. Just about, the car fell off the cliff, and it was impossible to save. "Fkook, this is too accurate." Bai Zhantang, a handsome and well-educated person, widened his eyes and uttered a foul language. Shen Mengchen smiled slightly. "Did you see that? Is what I said very accurate?" David directly opened the car door and walked down. At this time, the people of the law enforcement pavilion had already dragged Su Shimao's good driver out of the car. Although there is no danger to their lives, both of them were scratched with many wounds and blood flowed. After a simple dressing, Su Shimao gritted his teeth and stood up, looking at Shen Mengchen with hatred in his eyes. He felt that he had a car accident and was cursed by this little girl. The driver of the truck was not in serious trouble. Fortunately, it hit Su Shimao's car, otherwise it would be really dangerous. Without stopping too much, Su Shimao got into other cars and started driving again. They had to get to Baihei City before dark. This time it went well. Before the sun set, the group arrived at Baihei City. "Senior, let's keep contact information for each other. Since you saved me, I have to express myself." After arriving in Baihei City, Shen Mengchen said to Bai Zhantang. Bai Zhantang nodded, left contact information for each other, and Shen Mengchen left. David and the others found a hotel to stay in. Because they had been in the car for so long, they simply washed it down. Bai Zhantang and David all rested. But not long after lying down, Bai Zhantang received a call from Shen Mengchen, saying that he was inviting them to have dinner at home, and by the way, thanked them for their life-saving grace. Bai Zhantang really wanted to go, because he wanted Shen Mengchen's father to help him see his face, so as to know his future luck, but he didn't dare to decide, so he could only ask David for instructions. David also knew what Bai Zhantang meant and did not refuse, so he nodded. Not long after, a Rolls-Royce Phantom arrived at the door of the hotel and took Bai Zhantang and David to Shen Mengchen's house. Shen Mengchen's house is an antique courtyard, covering a large area, and the decoration style has the taste of the former palace. Looking at this courtyard, a wealthy boy like Bai Zhantang couldn't help but admire. "This is too luxurious, it's no different from the previous emperor's palace." "Senior!" Shen Mengchen suddenly jumped out and shouted at Bai Zhantang, looking very happy, but Shen Mengchen turned a blind eye to David. "Schoolgirl!" Bai Zhantang smiled slightly. "Let's go, my dad is ready." Shen Mengchen walked towards the restaurant with Bai Zhantang and David. The three of them walked around in circles for a while before arriving. If David and Bai Zhantang were asked to find it by themselves, they would not be able to find it in a short time. At this time, the restaurant is already full of delicious food, and there are several servants waiting on the side. Miss. Seeing Shen Mengchen coming, several servants hurriedly shouted. Where's my dad? Let him know that the guest is here. Shen Mengchen said to the servant. Got it. The servant nodded. Shen Mengchen greeted Bai Zhantang happily and put David aside, which made Bai Zhantang feel a little embarrassed, and looked at David from time to time with a look of apology. David didn't take it seriously, he sat quietly beside him with no expression. After a while, an old man wearing a Chinese tunic suit with grey hair and beard walked in. The old man looked kind, and he was somewhat similar to Shen Mengchen. This man was Shen Mengchen's father, Shen Dianshan. Dad, this is what I told you, the senior Bai Zhantang who saved my life. Seeing Shen Dianshan coming in, Shen Mengchen hurriedly greeted him, pointed to Bai Zhantang and said. Bai Zhantang and David were stunned when they saw Shen Mengchen's father. With Shen Dianshan's age, it was more than enough to be Shen Mengchen's grandfather. After Shen Dianshan glanced at Bai Zhantang and David, he smiled slightly. Thank you two for saving the little girl. I have prepared a light meal today, I hope you two don't take offense. Uncle Shen is being polite. In fact, it was Mr. Chen who took action to save the junior. Bai Zhantang said with an embarrassed expression. No matter who it is, the little girl is also rescued by the two of you, please sit down quickly. Shen Dianshan politely made a gesture of invitation. Soon, a few people were seated, and Shen Mengchen deliberately sat next to Bai Zhantang. It was obvious that she liked Bai Zhantang. During the banquet, Shen Mengchen always followed Bai Zhantang to ask questions, but ignored David. Shen Dianshan also seemed to be very enthusiastic about Bai Zhantang, while David was a bit like a foil, but David didn't care, he just ate silently. Uncle Shen, I heard from the junior sister, Uncle Shen is known as Shen Yi, and you can know everyone's origin and fortune just by looking at it. I wonder if you can ask Uncle Shen to help me take a look too. After getting to know each other, Bai Zhantang asked Shen Dianshan. Dad, tell the senior, I think the senior is a rich and noble child, and he will definitely do a lot in the future. Shen Mengchen also said on the side. Shen Dianshan smiled slightly. Bai Gongzi is indeed rich and noble, and his family is still very rich, but… Uncle Shen, just what? Bai Zhantang was startled and asked hastily. It's just that your Bai family has a tendency to decline, and you need to be supported by nobles. As long as nobles appear and your Bai family seizes the opportunity, it will surely ensure the prosperity of the Bai family for 100 years. Shen Dianshan said lightly. Uncle Shen, who is that noble person? Bai Zhantang hurriedly asked Shen Dianshan after looking at David. If David is that noble person, he will be more respectful to David. If David is not that noble person, then there is no need for their Bai family to waste energy on David. Ha ha ha, the secret can't be leaked, the words end here. Shen Dianshan stroked his beard and laughed. Bai Zhantang smiled, and it's not easy to ask questions, but at the moment, David can only be regarded as that noble person. Dad, show this guy. I think he has a bad background, but he is very lucky, but he will have a bloody disaster soon, but if you look carefully, you can't see through. Shen Mengchen pointed to David and said to Shen Dianshan. Shen Dianshan didn't even look at David, but shook his head. Dad, what do you mean? Is this guy dead? Shen Mengchen was surprised. Because often people who are about to die, Shen Dianshan will shake his head and not show it, because there is no need to watch it, although he can see the good and bad, but he does not have the ability to change his life against the sky. Don't dare to look. Shen Dianshan faintly spit out 3 words. Don't dare to look at it. Shen Mengchen was shocked, because she had never heard of it, her father said these 3 words. After David heard Shen Dianshan spit out 3 words that he did not dare to read, he was also slightly taken aback, slowly raised his head and glanced at Shen Dianshan, and then lowered his head again. "Dad, why don't you dare to show him?" Shen Mengchen said with a puzzled look. "Don't ask, let's talk about other things, and I also want to warn you that you are not allowed to show pictures to you in the future," Shen Dianshan said to Shen Mengchen with a slightly angry expression. "Oh, I see." Shen Mengchen nodded. When the meal was almost finished, Shen Mengchen suddenly said to Shen Dianshan, "Dad, seniors and the others will go to Suanya Valley to play tomorrow, can I go with them?" "Okay." Shen Dianshan nodded. Shen Mengchen was taken aback. "Dad, what happened to you today? Didn't you never let me go to Suanya Valley? Why did you let me go this time? Today is different from the past, you are also grown up, it's time to turn around." Shen Dianshan looked at Shen Mengchen dotingly and said. "Great, I love you so much, Dad." Shen Mengchen happily hugged Shen Dianshan's neck and laughed. "Okay, take young master by around the house and enjoy the scenery," Shen Dianshan said with a smile. "Okay." Shen Mengchen nodded, looked at Bai Zhantang and said, "Senior, I will show you around my house. I have raised a few koi, and you can understand people's words." Bai Zhantang looked at David, he needed to get David's permission. David nodded, "You go, it's not too late, we have something to do tomorrow." "Got it." Bai Zhantang nodded. "Senior, you always listen to what he does, don't worry about him." Shen Mengchen took Bai Zhantang and left. After Shen Mengchen and Bai Zhantang left, Shen Dianshan waved his hand and let all the servants go out. David took a sip of tea slowly. "Speak up if you have something to say." He knew that Shen Dianshan must have something to say to him alone. As soon as David's voice fell, Shen Dianshan knelt down in front of David with a thud, which shocked David. "Mr. Chen, I beg Mr. Chen to save my daughter's life." Shen Dianshan knelt in front of David and said. David was blinded all of a sudden, and hurriedly helped Shen Dianshan up and said, "What do you mean?" Shen Dianshan looked at David and said, "Mr. Chen is a dragon and a phoenix. Only you can save my daughter. You are the noble person I have been waiting for. Does your daughter have any incurable diseases?" David couldn't understand what Shen Dianshan meant. Shen Dianshan shook his head, "Mr. Chen, I know that you are here this time to deal with Suanyuegu, and I also know that you killed Suanyuegu's Bohu and Zhou patrolman and 2 guardians, Suanyuegu. Now you have an undeniable vengeance. Who the H3LL are you?" David frowned, this feeling of being kept in the dark is very bad. The other party knows his own details clearly, but he himself has no knowledge of the other party. "To tell the truth from Mr. Chen, I am the owner of Suanya Valley." As soon as Shen Dianshan's voice fell, David's nerves suddenly tightened, and he looked at Shen Dianshan with a look of alertness. "Don't be afraid, Mr. Chen, when I became the Valley Master of Suanya Valley, it was 5 years ago. The current Valley Master is my disciple Qian Feng." Seeing David being so alert, Shen Dianshan hurriedly explained. "Speak clearly once." David frowned and said. "Okay." Shen Dianshan began to tell David the matter one by one. It turned out that the previous Suanya Valley was just an organization, and it did not become a cult like it is now. Shen Dianshan relied on his own physiognomy to recruit many disciples and develop Suanya Valley very well. After Qian Feng became a disciple, Qian Feng actually had bad thoughts, and finally drove Shen Dianshan out of Suanya Valley, and he became the owner of the valley himself. Since Qian Feng became the owner of the valley, the entire Suanya Valley has also become extremely dark. In order to practice and accumulate money, he will do whatever it takes. In addition, Qian Feng has no dissent in order to control all the people in Suanya Valley, and even raises goo insects to control everyone. Recently, many young girls have disappeared in Baihei City. Shen Dianshan guessed that Jianfeng did it, and he also saw that he would die soon, and his daughter Shen Mengchen would also be murdered by Jianfeng, but he knew there will be a noble person in the middle, so I have been waiting. I didn't expect that after he saw David for the first time today, he immediately knew that David was that noble person. Hearing what Shen Dianshan said, David nodded his head suddenly, but he was still a little puzzled. Since the Shen family master is so powerful, why can't he see Jianfeng's ambition? You drove out of Suanya Valley, why didn't you kill you? Hey! Shen Dianshan sighed, Mr. Chen doesn't know anything, then Jianfeng should know that my physiognomy is very good, so he was already disfigured when he took me as his teacher, saying that his family was burned to death by the fire, he narrowly escaped his disfigurement, and I took him in because he was pitiful, and now that Jianfeng wears a mask every day. As for why he doesn't kill me, it's because he still wants to get a physiognomy secret from me, but I already feel that he is about to attack me, and the bargaining chip that can force me to hand over the secret is my daughter Shen Mengchen. Now only Mr. Chen can save my daughter. This Jianfeng's scheming is really serious. David was shocked after hearing this. He was able to disfigure himself and made plans very early. It seems that this is also a ruthless person. That's why you never let your daughter go to Suanya Valley? And today you agreed to her to go because of me? David asked. Shen Dianshan nodded, with Mr. Chen here, I can rest assured, and this matter must be resolved. I have not survived for half a month. Do you have any disease? I know some medical skills, so I can take a look at it for you. David said. Shen Dianshan shook his head, I have revealed too many secrets, even Deluo Jingxian can't save me, Mr. Chen doesn't have to work hard for me, but before I die, I have one thing to tell Mr. Chen. Patriarch Shen, please speak. Mr. Chen, you are absolutely extraordinary, so you will have many followers around you, but not many are loyal to you, many of them are because of interests, such as that by Zhan Tang. I understand, I'm just a cooperative relationship with the Bai family. David smiled, he just needed the medicinal materials from the Bai family's Yaoangfu, but if something happened to the Bai family, David would also help. No one is collecting medicinal materials for him, this is a partnership. Mr. Chen, what my daughter said just now is good. You do have a bloody disaster soon, but your identity is too secretive, even I can't see through it, so I need Mr. Chen's help to see what your disaster is. Shen Dianshan continued. How can I help? David asked. I need a drop of blood from Mr. Chen. No problem. David bit his finger and squeezed out a drop of blood. Shen Dianshan dipped David's blood with his fingers, and then lightly tapped on his forehead, and then stared at David, without blinking. After a while, Shen Dianshan's face began to turn pale, and the cold sweat on his forehead flowed down. Puff! A mouthful of blood suddenly spewed out of Shen Dianshan's mouth. Patriarch Shen, David hurriedly stretched out his hand, and a burst of spiritual power was injected into Shen Dianshan's body. Shen Dianshan looked at David in shock, and after a while to ease, he said to David, I still haven't been able to see through Mr. Chen's identity, but you are by no means an ordinary person, and your bloody disaster occurred on July 10th. Number 5, the place should be at sea or on an island. Boom! After Shen Dianshan's words, David was shocked. Isn't July 15th the time when Irvin let him go to the unknown island? Could it be that there is no chance for him to land on the island, but there are disasters waiting for him? David was a little confused at this time, and he didn't know who to believe. Never mind, we'll land on the island on July 15th. David is heartless and secretly decides. At this time, Shen Dianshan's whole body has become a lot older, the wrinkles on his face are obviously more, and his body is also a lot weaker. Seeing this, David wanted to inject some spiritual power into Shen Dianshan next time, but Shen Dianshan waved his hand to stop him. Mr. Chen, don't waste your energy, it's useless, I can live for 5 days at most, I just hope Mr. Chen can destroy Swanya Valley and save my daughter's life. Don't worry, Patriarch Shen, I will definitely destroy that Swanya Valley. David said firmly. Shen Dianshan smiled comfortably. After chatting with David for a while, Bai Zhantang and Shen Mengchen came back. Seeing Shen Dianshan's bad face, Shen Mengchen hurriedly asked, "Dad, what's the matter with you?" "It's okay." Shen Dianshan smiled slightly. "Patriarch Shen, we won't disturb you anymore." David followed Shen Dianshan to say goodbye. "Okay." Shen Dianshan nodded. "Senior, I'll drive to pick you up tomorrow, and let's go to Swanya Valley to play together." Shen Mengchen happily followed Bai Zhantang. Bai Zhantang smiled and nodded, then followed David away. The next morning, Shen Mengchen drove directly to the hotel, ready to go to Swanya Valley Resort with Bai Zhantang and David. And Su Shimao and his party are also ready to go to Swanya Valley to investigate. Seeing Shen Mengchen driving over to pick up Bai Zhantang and David, Su Shimao said coldly, "You can travel in the mountains and water, but don't hinder us from performing official duties. Besides, if you are in danger, I have no time to save you." "How do you talk?" Shen Mengchen couldn't see it, and said to Su Shimao, "I think you still have a bloody disaster today, you should stay in the hotel honestly. You say one more word." Su Shimao was angry and had a car accident on the road. Su Shimao was already resentful and thought it was Shen Mengchen who cursed him. Now Shen Mengchen even said to him, "How could Su Shimao bear it? I kindly remind you, since you don't believe it, forget it." Shen Mengchen rolled his eyes, and then looked at Bai Zhantang with a smile on his face. "Senior, let's get in the car." Bai Zhantang glanced at David, then got into the co-pilot, while David sat in the back row. Shen Mengchen kicked the accelerator, and the car sped out. "Humph, I really don't know what the pavilion master asked me to bring 2 sons over here." Su Shimao murmured, and led someone into the car towards the Swanya Valley Resort. Swanya Valley Resort is located in the southwest of Baihei City, only 100 miles away. Because of the large scale of the resort, there are many tourists. This is also an important source of income for Swanya Valley. You must know that there are a lot of members in Swanya Valley, and it is a lot of money to maintain it. This resort is just able to maintain the expenses of Swanya Valley, especially the purchase of herbs. After arriving at the place, Shen Mengchen was like a wild horse running away, looking around happily. "Senior, let's go to the sect to meet that divination master. I want to see if this guy is a real learner or a liar." Shen Mengchen pulled Bai Zhantang and said. Bai Zhantang didn't dare to call the shots, he could only look at David with an inquiring look, and when he saw David nod, Bai Zhantang agreed. David didn't go with him, he walked towards the depths of Swanya Valley. The scale of the sect is not large, but it is crowded with people, all of whom are looking for the master for divination. Shen Mengchen pulled Bai Zhantang and squeezed desperately towards it. "What to squeeze, don't you know how to line up?" A man with a fierce face shouted at Shen Mengchen. But as soon as the words fell, the man was pulled away by the person beside him. "You are courting death, that is the eldest miss of the Shen family." Soon, everyone watched Shen Mengchen give way. It seems that the Shen family is still very famous in Baihei City. In the sect lobby, a master wearing a monk's robe and sitting cross-legged, looked up at Shen Mengchen, and lowered his head slowly again. "Master, how much is a hexagram? I ask for a hexagram." Shen Mengchen asked the master. "Miss Shen is joking, you Shen family are superb in physiognomy, why do you still use me to do divination?" The master smiled faintly. "Physiognomy is physiognomy, and divination is divination. How can it be the same? I came here on purpose for you to do divination today. I want to see if what you said is correct." Shen Mengchen said with a playful expression. "If that's the case, then ask Miss Shen to shake the lottery." The master handed Shen Mengchen a bamboo tube with a lot of bamboo sticks in it. Shen Mengchen took the bamboo tube and shook it vigorously, and soon a bamboo stick fell to the ground. The master picked up the bamboo stick and looked at it, and smiled lightly. Miss Shen has had a disaster recently, and your father is afraid that he will die soon. As soon as the master's voice fell, Shen Mengchen's face suddenly became extremely ugly. What did you say? Believe it or not, I smashed your ruined sect. Ha ha ha, yes if you believe it, no if you don't. I just said it according to the hexagram on the bamboo stick. Why should Miss Shen be angry? If you don't believe it, I can explain it to you slowly. After the master finished speaking, he looked at the disciples on both sides and said, "Drive everyone out, and that's it for today." The two disciples hurriedly drove away all the people in line, and then closed the door of the lobby. Bai Zhantang frowned slightly, looking at the master. His expression became slightly nervous. "Junior girl, let's go, this thing is just a lie," Bai Zhantang said to Shen Mengchen. "Senior, if this guy can't explain clearly today, I'll tear down his ruined sect and even dare to curse my father to death." With a look of anger on Shen Mengchen's face, he squatted down and said to the master, "Explain to me, if the explanation is not clear, you know the consequences." "Miss Shen, your calamity has arrived now." The master looked at Shen Mengchen and suddenly smiled grimly. "What do you mean?" Shen Mengchen was taken aback. But before Shen Mengchen could react, the master slapped Shen Mengchen with a palm. Shen Mengchen was startled and didn't have time to react, but Bai Zhantang, who was on the side, had already prepared and kicked out, only to kick it on the master's wrist and pull Shen Mengchen up. "Junior, go." Shen Mengchen was so frightened at this time, she didn't think that this master would dare to do something to her. She had to know that their Shen family was in Baihei city with their hands covering the sky, and there were still people who dared to attack her. "Since you're here, don't think about leaving." The master smiled coldly. The whole person suddenly rose into the air, and slapped Bai Zhantang with a palm. Bai Zhantang tried his best to resist, but he still flew out backwards and fell heavily on the wall. "Senior!" Shen Mengchen hurried over and shouted worriedly. The master walked towards Shen Mengchen with a sneer on his face. Shen Mengchen looked at the master in horror. "What are you going to do?" "My father is Shen Dianshan. If you dare to touch me, he will not let you go." "Ha ha ha, if you weren't that Shen Dianshan's daughter, I wouldn't move you today. As long as I caught you, then Shen Dianshan wouldn't just obey." With a grim smile on his face, the master reached out and grabbed Shen Mengchen. Bang! With a sudden loud noise, the door of the lobby was slammed open with great effort, and Su Shimao rushed in with him. Seeing the scene in front of him, Su Shimao glared at the master and said, "You guy, pretending to be sane, but behind the scenes doing things that are inferior to pigs and dogs, today I will bring you to justice." "People from the Dharma Protector Pavilion in Kyoto, you are still here after all." The master didn't seem to be surprised by Su Shimao's appearance. "Since you know my identity and you can't do anything, do you want me to do it?" Su Shimao shouted angrily. "Capture without a hand." The master sneered, "Those who came today, don't even think about leaving." The voice fell, and a dozen people suddenly poured out from the back of the lobby, all of them with extraordinary skills, and it seemed that they had already been ambushed behind. Seeing this, Su Shimao's face suddenly became a little ugly. "Do you really think my divination is a trick? I expected you to come," the master said proudly. "Do it!" Su Shimao roared and attacked the master directly. The Grand Master's face also sank. "Kill all the people in the Guardian Pavilion, arrest the man and the woman, the eldest young master of the Bai family, and the eldest lady of the Shen family. It's really a good bargaining chip." It seems that they already knew the identities of Bai Zhantang and Shen Mengchen. The strength of Grand Master Su Shimao, when he fought with that master, was completely unable to gain the upper hand, and his subordinates were also struggling to resist, not opponents at all, and casualties soon appeared.